Reading in bed.
Right, Amanda, what are we doing today?
We're doing Reading in Bed, episode 58, part 2.
Part ducks, yeah. Now, what is reading in bed, Amanda? We should have mentioned this probably half an hour ago. We just waffled on, didn't we? So,
It's a book review podcast. It's easy to figure out.
yeah, she reviews books. I slag them off normally, don't you?
Yeah, and sometimes it's the other way around.
Or sometimes I'm nice defending the book, and the man says, "No, it's garbage. You cannot read that. You cannot read that." But all those times we do like the same book. So, okay. Now, we better get on to news, Amanda, hadn't we? News is part B. Yeah, now, Amanda's obviously been poorly. She's not been up to a ton recently. So, but the plan was to start releasing books from me fairly quick. So I've got several books lined up for releasing. And as soon as young lady sitting next to me is well properly, she's going to show me how to use Drafted Digital, and I'm going to start releasing them. So I've got a couple of things coming up over the next couple of months. So watch this space. That's all the news. So Smoker Label has been manically busy, and if you didn't hear part 1 of this podcast, after December for Reading in Bed, we are taking a break from Reading in Bed, aren't we, Amanda? And what we're doing is replace it.
We're doing a supernatural podcast.
Oh, Jensen, what for Jensen and Misha, is it?
I wish. No. This is talking about supernatural things, not two supernatural actors. That would be good, though.
Oh, I know how much you'd like that. So, but no, we'll watch. Just listen to the first podcast. We'll go through it then in more depth. I promise you. Okay, now for part ducks and of this, then we're back to doing 3 books each, or 3 books in total, I should say. 1 joint book and 2 solo books. So we're going to start now, Amanda, aren't we, with the joint book?
Yeah.
What? Right. Do you want me to do the blurb, or would you?
Yeah.
Okay. Book is by Blake Auden. The book is called To Drown as a Cure for Thirst. And that's a weighty title. The 5th collection from poet Blake Auden, To Drown as a Cure for Thirst, is a delicate exploration of grief and how it affects and is affected by time and memory. Written in the wake of a global pandemic, the book touches on themes such as loss, healing, personal reflection, mental health and love, even in the face of the things that haunt us. Auden's most personal and deeply honest collection to date, these pages examine the idea we can overcome what winter has taken, and that to her is simply an act of remembering. Right, okay, Amanda. I've done this as weeks of strengths and weaknesses at the same time. What have you done it?
I've just basically written a few thoughts on it.
That's what I've done pretty well as well, really, with that. So, Right. Would you like to start off then?
Yeah, so the thing that I liked about these is that they're quite sort of deeply personal thoughts, and most of them take up less than a page. And it reminded me a little bit, actually. I reviewed Misha Collins' poetry book a few months back.
Oh, yeah.
And it reminded me a little bit of that, like it's just snippets of thoughts. Yeah,
they were. The people looking at the book itself and this, the pieces are very, very, they're quite fragile, Amanda, aren't they? And perhaps in some cases very fragmented as well. But they say a lot in a few short pieces. Now, have you got any examples you want to share here, Amanda, particular pieces? I wrote a few down.
Yeah, so there's one called Standard Bearer, and it says, the anxiety is a painted flag, wind-torn and hung heavy from the mast of my spine. And that's basically it. That's how short they are.
Yeah, I got one. There's a couple that stood out to me. I really liked the first one, which was Tell Me Something Good, which I found an incredibly stark reflection of obviously back before lockdown, where he finished off the piece with, tell me the light is simply our shadow leaving, at the glittering steel is not a blade. And that really made me think, that piece, Amanda. You know what? Obviously, a lot of this book's a note of a lockdown thing. It's a lockdown book, and it made me think of that. People wondered back in March 2020, the job I was at the time sent me home because I'm diabetic, didn't they, Amanda, at the time, and told me,
yeah,
I was told I couldn't leave the house. It was incredibly. It was a difficult time, really, because you were afraid to leave the house yourself, weren't you? And I knew I couldn't. So it made me think of that. It was an incredibly reflective period. I think this book's like that, really. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it got to the point where you start wondering, like, if you're ever going to be able to sort of go out again, and is everything ever going to return to how it was and sort of normal life, which it eventually did, but at the time it just felt like it might never.
Yeah, I got this, and there's a line. As the other poem I made a quote of was one called "The Loop," which covers that topic. Actually, he had a line in it. Suppose tomorrow is just yesterday, moving, and then it was like for replacing your memories with nothing but darkness. It made me think of a state of mind where things were neither bright nor weather-wise. Everything was in a completely different state of mind. And I think that's what the author's trying to cover with this book, I think. What do you think?
Yeah.
Now, is there anything else you particularly want to touch on this reviewing this book, Amanda?
I think it was really relatable. This is just like subjects like grief and loss and mental health. And it's like most people have experienced them on some level or known somebody going through different mental health issues if they haven't sort of suffered it themselves.
Yeah, it was. And it was I guess he's a Brighton-based poet. So I know, obviously, we've got a friend up who was at that point who's living in Brighton, and I know what he went through at that time. And he told me very, very similar, relatable memories to what this gentleman went through at the same time. So it was clearly, it was that thing. So you're like, it's relatable to what you were going through as a person. Like that time, Amanda, we are living in like a 2-bedroom apartment, and I know of, and you know of people, and we know quite a few couples that split during this period. And it's like when everything gets took away from you, it's hard to actually carry on. And I think that's what this gentleman was touching on really well with the book. I think it's an excellent book, actually.
Yeah.
It's an excellent book. It's the only I'm a bit concerned the fact like it took so long to come out. So obviously we're now basically over a year after lockdown, really, aren't we? Perhaps it was a bit too long for that to come out.
It has to be read like a lockdown book, though. I think it can relate to other things. And it's like, in some ways, it's like because of like mental health and grief and loss, some people are sort of on a self-imposed lockdown, whether there's been COVID or not.
Yeah, you went through that yourself, didn't you, Amanda, at the time? Because I know, obviously, like when 2020, you were very, very reluctant to leave, weren't you? That's why you told me at the time, and it was very, very difficult to get through at the time for all of us. So I think it affects everyone in different ways. But yeah, it was difficult times, and I can, in relation to this book, there's an awful lot of like nervousness and grief in it as well, and probably sadness as well. So it was an excellent book, mind you. What do you think?
Yeah. I know some people in the reviews sort of commented it was a bit raw in places, but I think that adds to the feelings behind the poems.
Yeah, no, I've read the same review on that as well. And I think when you're doing poetry as this sort of sparseness, sometimes there's not much scope for sometimes of getting flowery with it, to put it bluntly, is there? Like he's just
sometimes
basically
it just needs to be presented with like warts and all, and there's like people need to read that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what the strength of this book is. It's if you're one of these sort of people like really flowery, I wandered lonely as a cloud poetry, this isn't it. But you do agree, if you said already, if you like your poetry to have warts and all on it, and to be really bare to the bone, you're going to love it, I think.
Yeah.
Right, well, have you got anything else you want to add, Amanda? Because I'm done otherwise.
The only slightly negative thing is it's not like reading, so it's like even though it's relatively short sort of book, even though it's fairly longer in some ways than some poetry collections. But it took me several sittings to get through because you can't just like sit through and read it from beginning to end. Not without a bottle of vodka, anyway.
Or Valium, right? Yeah. Sorry, Blake. Yeah. No, it's definitely. I think poetry is really sort of a pleasure medium because we both write lots of it, I could very rarely sit down and read a poetry book in one sitting anyway. It often takes me 4, 5, 6, or some even more longer settings than that. And I also have to go back to poems several times. This was one of those sort of books to me. It took me on and off all month really to read this. And I'm glad I did it that way. As you said, I know you read it in several sittings, didn't you yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of book, but that's good in some ways, in my mind. Right, unless Amanda's got anything else, should we get marking?
Yeah.
Ladies first.
I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Guess what I'm going to give this book, Amanda?
8.
Correct. Double 8s. 8, yeah. No, it's good. It's a recommended book. It's really good. It's really, really good. I'm due to speak to this gentleman, Spoken Label, actually. Probably just for this goes out live, so I'm looking forward to chatting to him further about it. So, anyway, Amanda, should we move on?
Yeah.
It's me next, isn't it?
You're next.
Okay. Oh, I haven't a clue. But do you want some spoilers on this?
Yeah.
This is a grim book. Okay, this really is a grim book going up next. So that's all I'm going to say. So, right, we shall see you all in 2 shakes of advice. Say bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Reading in bed.
Well, that's Reading in Bed with me, Amanda.
Reading in bed.
Andy, Ryan. Well, do we technically count before we did episode A as a joint book or just a no cut a special? Okay, so my solo book of the month. What do you want to know?
The title and the author.
Okay, this I hope I get a pronunciation right. This is Morwenna Blackwood, and it's called The Devolution of Us.
Okay, and do you want to read the blurb?
Okay, the water was red and translucent, like when you rinse a paintbrush in a jam jar. The deeper into the water, the darker the red got. No, the thicker it got. It wasn't water, it was human. It was Kath. Kath is dead. But how and why isn't clear cut to her best friend Kayleen. As Kayleen searches for answers, she is drawn deeper into Kath's hidden world. The devolution of us questions where the story really begins and whether the world is in our heads is more real than reality.
Okay, so how did you find out about this book?
Well, I followed this poet, this writer. I don't know if she's a poet, if memory is correct. And she put up that a novel she wrote some years ago was a freebie on Amazon on a page. I thought, okay, give it a go. It was a freebie for a couple of weeks. It was, and I think it's back to full price now.
Yeah. Do you want to start with the good points then?
Yeah, okay. It kind of made sense to follow this one from Bill Clinton and James Patterson's book, actually, because that had a very varying viewpoints in it. This book's got 3 viewpoints throughout the book. And it's interesting because obviously you got Kayleigh. It's hard to judge what you say in the main characters because, and I've not wrote down the male name. There was a male narrator. I forgot his name. I've not wrote it down. But then you had a section in the book called Kathy's Diary or Book. So I basically, after obviously I said before to you about the lady that dies in the book. I liked the bit because it was referred as Kathy's Diary, and that was told in the past. And then he had the 2 viewpoints in the current. So like that was, you know what I mean? Like it was given a bit of a weird sort of feel because it was telling a lot of stuff in the past and eventually got to near the present. Okay. And it is a thriller, of course, as well.
So was it a kind of thriller where there's like a twist and you've got to guess, or was it just sort of action packed?
Neither really. It was a hard book this because it touched on some pretty full on issues. There was a lot about domestic violence in it and abuse of a really bad kind. And also touched on, because Kathy's part of the book and also Kayleigh's as well, was about crippling mental illness. And obviously, yes, it was powerful, but it didn't make life easier for itself in places for the reading. It was pretty difficult to read, that was, because so I'm sure you understand me, when you're touching topics like that, it's not going to be an easy book to read.
No. Was it done well, or did it feel like it was just sort of there for the sake of it?
No. There's a weakness in it. I'll come on to in a minute. That was in there for the sake of it. It shouldn't have been in that book, I don't think. No, but the pacing was pretty good. I had trouble in the book, and I can say it's a strength really, where I didn't really connect to any of the three major characters, but the drive of the book pulls you through it. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Didn't think that I had mixed feelings about the three characters, and I liked the use of Kathy's diary in the book. It changed the pace of the book. How realistic the three characters were, that's another ball game. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But the structure of the book carried me through to at the end of it, certainly.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say before you mention any weak points?
I'll go straight to the weaknesses, really, because I can cover the rest of it then, okay? Like I said to you, I did think the journey of the book was good. And it worked fairly well. I think it was good rather than great, if that makes sense, because there was a reference to one of the characters. Do you want me to go into this? Because it is big spoilers.
Yeah, spoiler alert, everyone.
Well, okay, there was a reference in the book to grooming at the end of it. Sexual grooming of one of the characters when she was underage. And it hadn't been, I don't think it had been touched on earlier in the book. So it came out in the last 15 pages, and I thought to myself, when you put a twist like that, you've got to have some sort of build up to it. Do you agree with me on that? It just felt like it came out of nowhere.
So there were no like subtle hints or anything like earlier in the book that you kind of thought, oh, that explains that.
Didn't to me at all. It just seemed out of place. Two major female characters both had mental health issues. But that give the implication, or at least, I'm not going to go into this in more detail, at least one of them had sexual abuse. And I felt it out of place. I've got to be honest with you, that to do that, it's got to be having a bit more you do agree with me, that's a bit more obvious sometimes to some degree, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Earlier in the book, I think it jarred somewhat because there's no real build up there. And it cost it marks in my final review, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I've got to say, Amanda.
Okay, so do you want to give it a mark out of 10?
What do you think I'm going to give this?
I think it might be about a 7.
Yeah, it's a 7 for 7. But I said to you, it's when you don't mean you read books, man, you think they're good rather than great.
Yeah.
It was a good book. A good book. Was it as good as James Patterson and Bill Clinton or Blake Auden? No. But readable. So. Okay, that's all I've got to say for this book. Amanda, you're next on our third and final part this month. Yes. What hints have you got for us?
There's a trap. You should be careful.
Watch
you
out.
Don't want to get trapped.
Trapped. Okay. We'll find out in a minute then. See you all in a minute then. Say bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Reading in bed.
Reading in Bed, episode 58. She is
Amanda Nicholson.
I am Andy N. On to Amanda's, like I said before, kind of, do we call this solo books? I presume, don't we? Do your solo book of the month, isn't it? So, okay. Yeah. What do you want to reveal first, Amanda?
Okay, so the book's called The Husband Trap, and it's written by N.J. Moss.
Everyone, people who don't know us, obviously, we're married. And every time she pulls out books like this, I start worrying because she's done books before about sisters dying and sister killers and stuff like that. And I've often wondered about that. Now we're the husband traps. Oh, God. Right here. Give us a blurb.
Okay. He's just proposed to his girlfriend, but another woman has him in her sights. In his terrifying thriller by the author of My Dead Husband, Liam finally popped the question and Emily said yes. But that very same night, Liam gets abducted and wakes up in a nightmare. On a large estate in the middle of nowhere, Liam finds himself the object of a woman's twisted affections and confined to a stone cell. A servant ignores him. A guard watches over him. Meanwhile, Emily struggles to take care of their newborn child and tries to find the strength to move on. Can Liam ever escape and recover the life that was stolen from him? Or will this bizarre prison be the last place he ever sees?
You know what that makes me think of before we go into anything? I kept thinking, I thought of Misery then by Stephen King then a bit.
It is a little bit. It's like a reverse. Well, it's not even a reverse, is it? Because it's a woman abducted the man in that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's made me think of that straight away then. I know, even if it probably isn't. So, okay. How did you first find out about this book then?
Oh God, I don't know where I found this actually. It
Was this
might have
was
been
this a
on
kid
Pigeonhole, but
this one your Kindle books, was it, or was it a Pigeonhole book then?
it was either Pigeonhole or it was a 99 pence one off Amazon.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. It's like I don't know what drew you to this book then. Either way, then can you remember?
I think just a blurb, and I just thought I've not really read anything like that. I mean, apart from Misery.
No, no, it's fair enough. No, is it quite a new book? This one is it?
I think it's relatively new, yeah.
It's not one I've heard of. Again, who am I? Who am I? So, well, give us the strengths of the book then.
I think it was an interesting idea with some good and sort of less believable parts. And it kept me reading because I kept thinking, like, what's going to happen? Is he going to break out? And I think in some ways I was sort of expecting him to develop Stockholm syndrome and end up falling in love with this woman that's kidnapped him.
Oh yeah, that would have been interesting. Certainly.
I
I
thought
bet.
that because that's the kind of idea that she's abducted him in the hope that he'll fall in love with her. So I thought eventually, he's a man and he's locked in a cell, and I thought that that's what he would end up doing. But I'm not going to ruin it too much. But that doesn't happen anyway.
No, it's fair enough. I've seen films where we've done it the other way around, and you get the totally unbelievable ones like Seven Brides and Seven Brothers, where basically they kidnap five women to matter, they all fall in love with the men. Like it is, but you don't. If it's the other way around, that's a twisting it, turning on its head basically straight away. So now, am I right in thinking with this then? Was it a book where a lot of the action was confined to the very basic when he got pinned in the house into a very small section of space, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was quite drawn out, and you don't see much of Emily at first. You see her later on in the book and how she's struggling to cope and she don't know what's happened to him. But it's a lot of it was just he was in his cell and it was sort of being conditioned to think and behave certain ways, and he'd be punished and left without food or just left in his cell and not taken out of his cell for any fresh air or anything if he didn't do what was asked of him.
Yeah. No, of course, yeah. And what was with it being a book that obviously, like I said, it was obviously taking its time developing. What was the pacing like in this book? Was it quite well paced? Do you think, and structured?
Yeah, there were a couple of small twists which I won't go into when he's first kidnapped and sort of based around this woman that's kidnapped him. But the thing I was worried about is it's like it could portray women as being crazy and bunny boilers because it's got like a
Yeah,
woman at the centre of it that's rich and she's decided, oh, that's the guy. Let's kidnap him from his pregnant fiance and child that's about to be born and make him fall in love with me. And I don't really know any woman that would go that far.
yeah. That's a bit of it's an odd one that. So straight away with it. So yeah. So obviously, then tell us about then because it's only really touching on the two characters, really, isn't it? So both of these have got to go through. I'm guessing the man in particular have to go through some kind of emotional journey, don't they?
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, it's like her family. She's from a well-off family, so you see her dad and some of her. I don't know if you'd call them friends or acquaintances, and they all seem to be in on it, and they don't really mind what she's doing. And it just says a lot about people that are elite and sort of have a lot of money. Even though
Yeah,
it might be far-fetched in places, it's not that far-fetched in the sense that there's people that go to certain universities that I won't name that tend to go into politics and have been known to burn money in front of homeless people and make poor people suffer. So in that sense, it's not that far-fetched.
yeah. No, I get it. Kind of guy and completely the same with it. So was it quite a long book to read? This one was it? Or was it fairly brief?
It did take me a while to get through it because even though I wanted to find out if he was going to escape or if he was going to fall in love with her, I could only read small chunks of it because it was a bit disturbing in parts. it was almost like the woman was like trying to rape the man. And if you put that in the sort of, if you switch that around, I think there'd be a lot of complaints about it.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. It was it by a man or woman who wrote this book?
I think it's written by a man. It's N.J. Moss, but I do get the impression that's a man.
Yeah, so I think it sounded like the initials on it basically have actually been left ambiguous unless you research it, then don't they? So
Yeah.
that's why, because it's definitely I see what you get out of it. So it sounds a bit of an odd book. Was it quite a long book?
I don't think it was that long. I think I read it over a couple of weeks, so I just read small chunks at a time.
Yeah, no, of course, I get completely with it. So it's just one of those sort of ones where you're probably right, doing the right thing, taking your time with it, really, love. So what I can see with that one straight away. It sounds interesting, mind you, so certainly so. Now, is there any sort of weaknesses on this book before we head off the strengths?
No, I've covered everything really. It was a bit unbelievable in some places, but and they don't portray women very well.
Oh, right, it most definitely doesn't. But that one certainly, I agree with you in that. So, yeah, it's an odd one, certainly, pretty bluntly. So, but anyway, that being the case, and as there's nothing else to discuss with it, do you want to give us your mark on it?
Yeah, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
Oh, it's a good mark, still. It's a good mark, even though you said it was. You were obviously not sure on the reality of it in places. Was it? Did he? What's the word? It's like my book I've read before, where it was actually paced enough to make you want to carry and read it, and basically, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Structure of it, that's a better word. Yeah. So, no, fair play. Not fair play. So, well, that's it, guys and girls, today, isn't it, Amanda? So that's all we've got to say. Now, have we got any hints about anything we'll reveal for next month?
I know what I'm reading, but I can't think of any hints without giving it away.
Well, we'll just tell people, because I know our joint book for November is going to be Dracula's Child, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't know who wrote that, so I can't comment on that one, to be honest with you. So that said, so with us running a bit late this month, and obviously waiting for Amanda to get a bit better, it might end up being a slightly shorter episode next month. We'll have to see how it goes. I want to read, I've been sat there for a while as well. I want to read the book by our friend David Hartley as well. Who's got a book out called, and I'm not sure how you pronounce it, called Fauna. I'm going to try and read that for next month as well. That's quite a nice, short, compact book, and it does write a lot of very, very flash fiction pieces, Dave, and that'd be a good book. So, but anyway, until that auspicious occasion, watch out for Storytime Andy and Amanda. That'll be out for the end of the month, and we'll get November's in the can soon, as quick as we can as well, before I lose my voice probably as well. So, but anyway, right, Amanda.
Bye, everyone.
See you all next time. Stay safe and stay over.
Reading in bed. Reading in bed.